My name is Eleanor Walsh. I'm 73 years old, and I never thought I'd be standing in my own hallway at 3 in the morning, pressed against the wall like a fugitive, while my neighbor frantically warned me that my own family was coming to destroy me. But let me start where it really began, not with that terrifying knock, but 6 months earlier, when I made the mistake of telling my son Michael about the settlement. I'd worked for Hartwell Manufacturing for 42 years, started on the assembly line in 1979, worked my way to quality control supervisor, retired in 2021. When the company got sued for the asbestos exposure that had sickened so many of us, I didn't think much would come of it. Class action lawsuits. They sound impressive, but the actual people rarely see real money. Then the letter came. Settlement approved. My portion, $847,000. I sat at my kitchen table staring at that number until the words blurred. Nearly $850,000. For a woman who'd raised 2 kids on supervisor wages, who'd clipped coupons and bought day-old bread and stretched every dollar until it screamed, this was impossible wealth. I should have stayed quiet. I should have told no one. But Michael was my son, my firstborn, and when he called that Sunday like he always did, the news just tumbled out. "Mom, that's incredible!" His voice exploded through the phone with an enthusiasm I hadn't heard in years. "This is going to change everything for you. God, you deserve this, after everything you've been through." Michael had always been the affectionate one. His sister Lauren was more reserved, more like me, cautious with emotions, careful with words. But Michael wore his heart everywhere, and hearing that joy in his voice made my own heart swell. "I'm still in shock," I admitted, glancing again at the letter. "I never expected this much." "Listen, Mom, we need to talk about how to handle this properly. You can't just put this in a regular bank account. We need to discuss investment strategies, tax implications, estate planning." His voice shifted into that efficient businessman tone he used. Michael worked in pharmaceutical sales, made decent money, always talked about portfolios and market positions. "Why don't Vanessa and I drive up this weekend? We'll take you to dinner, talk through everything." Vanessa, his wife of 8 years. I'd always felt something cold beneath her polished surface, but I'd convinced myself it was just different personalities. She came from money, real money, the kind where people summered as a verb and winters meant aspen. What she was doing with my middle-class son, I'd never quite understood, but they seemed happy enough. "You don't need to make a special trip," I said. "It's a 4-hour drive." "Mom, this is important. Besides, we haven't seen you since Christmas. It's already March. Let us do this." So they came that Saturday. Michael hugged me tight on the doorstep, and Vanessa offered her cheek for an air kiss, her perfume something expensive and vaguely floral. She wore cream-colored slacks that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and her nails were perfect ovals painted a subtle mauve. Over dinner at Romano's, a restaurant I'd always considered too expensive for regular occasions, Michael pulled out a leather portfolio. "I've been doing some research," he said, flipping it open to reveal printed spreadsheets and highlighted articles. "First thing we need to do is get you set up with a proper financial advisor. Someone from my firm knows a guy at Merrill Lynch. Then we're looking at a diversified portfolio, stocks, bonds, maybe some real estate investment trusts." I nodded, trying to follow. Numbers had never intimidated me in the practical sense. I could budget household expenses down to the penny. But this language of investments felt foreign and slightly threatening. "What about just leaving most of it in the bank?" I asked. "I don't need much. My pension and Social Security cover my expenses." Vanessa set down her wine glass with a soft click. "Eleanor, that would be financially irresponsible. Inflation alone would erode the value significantly over time. You'd essentially be losing money." "But it would be safe," I said. "Safe and stupid aren't the same thing." She smiled when she said it, but the words landed like small stones. Michael shot her a look, then covered my hand with his. "What Vanessa means is that we want to help you make smart choices. This money could set you up for a really comfortable retirement. Maybe even leave something significant for me and Lauren." There it was. The first mention of inheritance. It floated across the table, innocent as a butterfly, but something in my chest tightened. "I'm not planning on dying anytime soon," I said lightly. Of course not. Michael squeezed my hand. God, no, Mom. We're talking decades here, but it's never too early for estate planning. Making sure everything's structured properly, minimizing tax burden for your beneficiaries. This is just smart planning. The evening continued with more discussion of financial instruments I barely understood. Michael was so enthusiastic, drawing diagrams on his cloth napkin, talking about compound interest and diversification strategies. Vanessa nodded along, occasionally interjecting with terms like liquidity and asset allocation. By the time they dropped me home, my head was spinning. We'll email you some information, Michael promised, hugging me goodnight, and I'll set up that meeting with the financial advisor. Don't worry, Mom. We're going to take good care of you. That phrase, take good care of you, echoed in my head as I got ready for bed. It should have felt comforting. Instead, it felt like something being wrapped around me, gentle but increasingly tight. The emails started arriving on Monday, long, detailed messages from Michael with attachments, PDFs of financial articles, spreadsheets comparing investment options, links to estate planning attorneys. Each one ended with some variation of, just want to make sure you're protected, Mom, or this is too important to leave to chance. Then Lauren called. Mom, what's this I hear about you getting a huge settlement? Her voice was sharp, accusatory. Michael told me. Why didn't you call me? I was going to. Were you? Because apparently Michael's already got you meeting with financial advisors and setting up investment accounts. Is he trying to get his hands on your money? Lauren, it's not like that. He's trying to help. Help himself, probably. Lauren had always been suspicious, always assuming the worst of people's motivations. It was exhausting, but sometimes, her paranoia caught things I missed. You need to be careful, Mom. Money changes people. You tell someone you suddenly have nearly $1 million and watch how fast they start circling. Your brother isn't circling. He's concerned. Concerned about what percentage he can manage for you, I bet. She sighed, and I heard something soften in her voice. Look, I'm not saying he's deliberately trying to scam you, but even good intentions can lead to you losing control of your own money. Just be careful who you give authority to, okay? After we hung up, I sat in my living room as the afternoon light slanted through the windows. This house, a small 3-bedroom ranch I'd bought in 1985, had been my sanctuary for nearly 40 years. Every mortgage payment made on time, every repair saved for and completed, every inch of it earned through my own labor. I'd raised 2 children here, buried a husband here. Well, spread his ashes in the garden, per his wishes. This house represented every value I'd built my life on: self-sufficiency, hard work, independence. The settlement money was mine. Compensation for lungs that would never be quite right, for colleagues who'd died of mesothelioma, for decades of breathing air the company knew was poisonous. It wasn't a windfall or a lottery ticket. It was the price of my health, paid in corporate negligence. But already, just days after sharing the news, I could feel that independence slipping. Michael emailing me multiple times a day, Lauren calling to warn me about Michael, both of them talking about the money, like it was a shared asset rather than my personal compensation. I decided to slow everything down. When Michael called that Wednesday to confirm the financial advisor meeting he'd scheduled for Friday, I told him I needed more time. More time for what? He sounded confused, almost hurt. Mom, the sooner we get this structured properly, the sooner it starts working for you. I just need to think, Michael. This is a big change. I'm not ready to make major decisions yet. A pause. Then, is Lauren getting in your head? Because she called me yesterday with some pretty paranoid accusations. This isn't about Lauren. It's about me needing to process this at my own pace. Fine. His voice had gone flat. But don't wait too long. Every day that money sits doing nothing is opportunity lost. We hung up with a coldness that felt new and frightening. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Michael's tone, about Vanessa's safe and stupid comment, about Lauren's warnings, about how money I hadn't even received yet was already creating fractures in my family. Around midnight, I got up and made tea, sat at my kitchen table where I'd sat 10,000 times before, where I'd helped with homework and paid bills and shared meals. Everything the same, everything different. I decided then that I would handle this carefully. Talk to a lawyer, my own lawyer, not one Michael recommended. Understand my options before committing to anything. Keep the money separate, keep control. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that my decision to pause had already marked me as a problem to be solved. The next 3 weeks were strange. Michael's calls decreased from daily to every few days, and when we did talk, there was a new quality to his voice. Not angry exactly, but somehow evaluating. Like he was reassessing me, recalculating my value. Vanessa called once, ostensibly to chat, but the conversation kept circling back to the settlement. Have you thought more about the investment strategy? Have you met with anyone yet? Michael mentioned you wanted to wait. Is everything okay? I kept my answers vague. Yes, I was thinking about it. No, I hadn't made any decisions. Yes, everything was fine. Lauren, meanwhile, had gone in the opposite direction. She called almost daily, sometimes just to chat about nothing, sometimes to check that I hadn't signed anything without reading it carefully. Her concern felt genuine, but it was also suffocating. I'm fine, I kept telling her. I'm being careful. You don't need to worry. Someone needs to worry, she said. Clearly, Michael's got dollar signs in his eyes. That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time he called just to see how you are, without mentioning the money? I couldn't answer that. But the real shift came on a Tuesday in early April. I was in my garden, my small victory garden I called it, where I grew tomatoes and peppers and herbs, when I noticed my neighbor Helen watching from her porch. Helen was 78, a widow like me, and we'd been cordial neighbors for years. We weren't close friends, she mostly kept to herself, but we'd help each other out with small things. She'd water my plants when I visited Lauren. I'd bring in her garbage cans when her arthritis flared up. Eleanor, she called over, could you come here a moment? I brushed dirt from my gloves and walked over. Helen's face was serious, almost worried. I don't want to overstep, she began, but I feel like I should tell you something. That man and woman who visited you a few weeks ago, your son and his wife? Michael and Vanessa, yes. They came back yesterday, while you were at the grocery store. My stomach dropped. They came back? They knocked on your door for a while, then went around to the back. I saw them looking in your windows. Helen's weathered hands twisted together. I almost called the police, but then I recognized them from before. I figured maybe you'd given them a key or something, but it seemed odd. The way they were peering in, trying the doors. They didn't mention coming by. My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Maybe they wanted to surprise you. But Helen's expression said she didn't believe that any more than I did. That evening, I called Michael. Hey, Mom. His voice was distracted. I could hear Vanessa saying something in the background. Helen said you stopped by yesterday. A pause, just a fraction too long. Oh, yeah. We were in the area, thought we'd drop in. You weren't home. You didn't call first. It was spontaneous. We were driving back from Vanessa's parents' place. Took a slight detour. He laughed, but it sounded rehearsed. Is there a problem? Helen said you were looking in the windows. We were checking to see if you were in the back garden. What is this, Mom? Are you interrogating me? I'm just trying to understand why you drive 4 hours without calling first. Jesus Christ, he exhaled sharply. You know what? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're being paranoid. Has Lauren been filling your head with her conspiracy theories? This has nothing to do with Lauren. Doesn't it? Because ever since she started poisoning you against me, you've been acting like I'm some kind of criminal. I'm trying to help you, and you're treating me like I'm trying to rob you. Michael, I have to go. Call me when you're ready to act like a rational adult. He hung up. I stood in my kitchen, phone still in my hand, feeling like the floor had tilted beneath me. In 51 years of being Michael's mother, he'd never spoken to me like that, never dismissed me with that contempt. Over the next week, I noticed other small things. When I checked my mailbox, It looked like someone had rifled through it. Envelopes slightly displaced, the usual order disrupted. I found footprints in the mud beneath my bedroom window, too large to be mine. My garden gate, which I always latched carefully, was hanging open one morning. Each incident alone was minor, explainable. Together they formed a pattern that made my skin crawl. I started keeping my curtains closed, started checking the locks on my doors multiple times before bed, started feeling like a stranger in my own home. Lauren noticed something was wrong when she called that Friday. "Mom, you sound stressed. What's going on?" I told her everything. Michael's unexpected visit, the window peering, the disturbed mail, the footprints. As I said it all out loud, I felt ridiculous, like a paranoid old woman jumping at shadows. But Lauren didn't laugh. "Mom, listen to me. I think you need to protect yourself legally, like right now, today." That seems extreme. Does it? Think about it. Michael's angry you won't give him control of your money. He's coming by your house when you're not home. Someone's been looking in your windows. What if he's trying to build a case that you're mentally incompetent, that you can't handle your own finances? Michael wouldn't he? Mom, I love my brother, but he married a woman who thinks people like us are basically peasants. Vanessa grew up with family trusts and offshore accounts. To her, you sitting on nearly $1 million without proper management probably seems insane. And Michael's always done whatever Vanessa wants. I sank into my kitchen chair. Outside, the April afternoon was beautiful, golden light and budding trees. Inside, everything felt cold. What do I do? Get a lawyer, a real one, someone who specializes in elder law. Have them draw up papers making your financial wishes crystal clear, maybe even a restraining order if I'm not getting a restraining order against my own son. Fine, but at least protect yourself legally. Please, Mom. I have a bad feeling about this. I spent the weekend researching elder law attorneys online. Found one with good reviews, Patricia Hendricks, whose website emphasized protecting seniors' autonomy and preventing financial exploitation. I called Monday morning and made an appointment for Wednesday. Tuesday night, everything exploded. I was asleep, deeply asleep, the dreamless heavy sleep of exhaustion, when the knocking started. Not gentle knocking, pounding, desperate hammering on my front door that yanked me from sleep with my heart already racing. I grabbed my robe and stumbled down the hallway, squinting against the darkness. The clock on the wall read 3:17 a.m. Through the small window beside the door, I could see Helen's face, wild-eyed and urgent. I unlocked the deadbolt and barely got the door open before she pushed inside. "Lock it!" she hissed. "Lock it now!" "Helen, what? They're coming for you." Her hands grabbed my shoulders, and I could feel them shaking. "You need to hide, right now." "Who's coming? What are you talking about?" I saw them pull up. 3 cars. Your son's car in front. They're planning something terrible, Eleanor. I heard them talking in your driveway last week. I should have told you, but I thought I might have misunderstood. But now they're back and— Slow down! I guided her to the couch, trying to process through my sleep-fogged brain. You heard Michael talking? About what? About having you committed. Helen's voice cracked. About how you're showing signs of dementia, how you're not capable of handling your affairs. His wife was saying something about how they needed documentation, needed witnesses to your incompetence. Eleanor, they're going to try to take everything from you. My blood turned to ice water. That's insane. Michael wouldn't— Look out your window, Helen whispered, but don't let them see you. I crept to my living room window and carefully parted the curtain just an inch. My breath stopped. 3 cars sat in my driveway, their headlights off. Michael's silver Honda Accord in front. Behind it, a black SUV I didn't recognize. Behind that, another sedan. As I watched, Michael got out of his car, then Vanessa from the passenger side. From the SUV emerged 2 men in dark clothing. The other sedan disgorged a woman carrying what looked like a leather briefcase. Michael gestured toward my house, and they all moved closer, congregating in a small group at the end of my driveway. Their voices were low, but occasionally a word drifted across the quiet night. Unstable, evaluation, authority. I stepped back from the window, my mind reeling. What do I do? My voice came out as a whisper. Helen pulled me further from the window. I have a plan. My nephew is a lawyer. He specializes in exactly this kind of situation. I called him before I came over. He's drawing up emergency protective paperwork right now, but we need to buy time. I don't understand any of this. Why would Michael— Don't trust your family. Helen's eyes were fierce in the dim light. Not when money's involved. People do terrible things when they think they're entitled to someone else's fortune. My nephew says these cases are becoming more common. Adult children trying to have aging parents declared incompetent so they can seize control of assets. The doorbell rang. We both froze. Mom! Michael's voice came through the door, artificially cheerful. Mom, are you awake? We need to talk to you. It's important. I couldn't move, couldn't think. Helen grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the back of the house. We go out the back, through the garden to my place. My nephew's on his way. We document everything, and then we fight back. I can't just run away. This is my house. Eleanor, Helen's voice was harder than I'd ever heard it. Listen to me very carefully. I worked as a nurse for 40 years. I saw this pattern repeat itself dozens of times. Children who smile while they're stealing their parents' dignity, their autonomy, their entire lives. If you open that door right now, those people will have you in a psychiatric evaluation before dawn, and by the end of the week, Michael will have power of attorney over everything you own. Another knock, louder. Mom, I know you're in there. I can see your bedroom light was on. Please open the door. We're worried about you. We're worried about you. Like I was a problem, a situation to be managed. Something crystallized in my chest, cold and hard and clarifying. This wasn't about concern. This was about control, about my son deciding I was too incompetent to manage my own money and taking steps to seize it. Let's go, I whispered to Helen. We moved quickly and quietly through my dark house, through the kitchen, out the back door, across my garden in the pre-dawn darkness. Behind us, I heard my doorbell ring again, then pounding. Michael's voice rising. Mom, open the door. We know you're in there. Helen's back door was unlocked. We slipped inside, and she immediately locked it behind us and pulled the curtains. Stay away from the windows, she said, guiding me to her small living room. My nephew should be here in 20 minutes. He lives across town, but he's rushing. I sank onto her floral couch, my whole body shaking. Through Helen's walls, I could hear voices outside. Michael's raised in frustration, a woman's calmer tones, a man saying something about checking the back. Why are you helping me? I asked Helen. We barely know each other. She sat beside me and took my hand. Her skin was paper-thin, spotted with age, but her grip was strong. Because I didn't help my sister, she said quietly. 20 years ago, her son and his wife did exactly this, convinced a judge she was incompetent, got themselves appointed guardians, moved her into a facility, sold her house, spent her savings. By the time she died 3 years later, there was nothing left, and I watched it happen because I didn't want to interfere with family business. Her eyes glistened. I won't make that mistake twice. We sat in the darkness of her living room, listening to my son and his associates search for me like I was a fugitive from my own life. And that's when I started to get angry. Not the hot, explosive anger that burns out quickly. The cold kind, the calculating kind, the kind that builds strategy instead of throwing tantrums. They thought I was incompetent, too old and confused to manage my own affairs. They thought they could just show up in the middle of the night with their psychiatric evaluators and their legal documents and strip away everything I'd spent 7 decades building. They were about to learn that the woman who'd survived factory work and single parenthood and 1,000 small indignities of being working class in America was not someone who surrendered easily. Helen's nephew arrived 23 minutes later. His name was David Rosen. He was 46 years old, and he specialized in elder law with a focus on financial exploitation by family members. Mrs. Walsh, he said, shaking my hand firmly, my aunt briefed me on the situation. First thing we need to do is document everything happening right now. I'm going to record video through the window of those people at your house. That's evidence of intimidation and harassment." He moved carefully to Helen's front window, which had a side-angle view of my driveway, and began filming on his phone. "Now," he continued, still filming, "tell me everything from the beginning. When did you receive the settlement? When did you tell family members? What happened next?" I told him everything while he recorded. The initial phone call with Michael, the dinner where they pushed investments, Lauren's warnings, the unexpected visit while I was shopping, the mail disturbances, the footprints, the phone call where Michael dismissed me as irrational. David listened, occasionally asking clarifying questions, his expression growing grimmer. "Textbook financial exploitation attempt," he said when I finished. "They're trying to establish a pattern of incompetence, your resistance to their financial advice, your paranoia about being watched, your irrational concerns about their visit. Then they bring in a compliant psychiatric professional, probably someone who does this kind of work regularly for families wanting to declare elderly relatives incompetent. Quick evaluation, recommendation for guardianship, emergency filing with a sympathetic judge, and by the time you know what's happening, your son has control of your assets." Can they actually do that? If they're smart about it and you don't fight back immediately? Yes, absolutely. I've seen it happen in as little as 72 hours. He looked at me directly. "But we're not going to let that happen." "What do we do?" "First, we establish your competence unequivocally. Tomorrow morning, well, this morning now, we get you to a reputable psychiatrist. Dr. Sarah Chen, she's excellent and court-recognized. She'll do a comprehensive evaluation that will document your complete mental competence. Second, I'm filing emergency protective orders before the courthouse opens. Third, we're going to expose exactly what your son is attempting to do." Through the window, I could see flashlight beams sweeping through my backyard. They were actively searching for me now. "They're going to see this as a declaration of war," I said quietly. "It is a declaration of war." David's voice was matter-of-fact. "They fired the first shot when they showed up here at 3 a.m. with an evaluation team. We're just returning fire." By 4:30 a.m., Michael and his group finally left. I watched through Helen's curtains as they congregated in my driveway one more time, Michael gesturing angrily, Vanessa with her phone pressed to her ear, the others looking frustrated. Finally, they drove away. All 3 cars, disappearing down my quiet street as the first hints of dawn touched the sky. I felt exhausted but strangely wired, like every nerve in my body was electrified. "You should try to rest," Helen said gently. "You can use my guest room. David will come back at 8 to take you to Dr. Chen's office." But I didn't sleep. I sat in Helen's kitchen drinking tea she made me, watching through the window as morning light slowly reclaimed my house. My sanctuary. My home. They'd tried to take it from me. Not with violence, but with the law, with paperwork and psychiatric evaluations, and concerned family members worried about poor elderly mother who couldn't manage her own affairs. It was a special kind of violence. Clean, socially acceptable, dressed up as love. By the time David returned at 8, I'd made a decision. This wouldn't be just defense. This would be a lesson. Dr. Sarah Chen's office was in a modern medical building downtown. She was perhaps 50, with kind eyes and a manner that was professional but warm. "Mrs. Walsh, I understand you're in a difficult situation," she said after David explained why we were there. "I'm going to conduct a comprehensive mental status evaluation. This will take several hours and will cover memory, reasoning, judgment, problem-solving, and functional capacity. The goal is to establish definitively your cognitive and decision-making abilities." The evaluation was exhausting. Memory tests where I had to recall lists of words, math problems, scenario-based questions about financial decisions, questions about current events, about my personal history, about hypothetical situations requiring judgment calls. Dr. Chen was thorough but patient, and by the time we finished, I felt wrung out. "Mrs. Walsh," she said, setting down her pen and looking at me directly. "I'm going to be very clear with you. Your cognitive function is well within normal range for your age. Your memory is actually above average. Your reasoning and judgment are sound. There is absolutely no evidence of dementia, incompetence, or diminished capacity. In fact, I'd say you're sharper than many people half your age I've evaluated." Relief flooded through me so powerfully, I felt tears prick my eyes. "I'm going to prepare a detailed written evaluation that will be admissible in court," Dr. Chen continued. "But I also want you to know, what your family is attempting to do is, in my professional opinion, abusive. Financial exploitation of elders is a growing problem, and you're absolutely right to fight back." By the time we left her office, it was early afternoon. David had been making phone calls the entire time, and he looked satisfied. "Judge Morrison has agreed to an emergency hearing tomorrow morning," he said. "We're filing for a protective order preventing your son or his wife from contacting you, accessing your property, or making any legal claims regarding your competence. We're also filing notice that any power of attorney documents bearing your signature that may suddenly surface should be considered suspicious." "Will they be at this hearing?" "Oh, they'll be notified. They'll have every opportunity to contest our claims." David smiled coldly. "I'm actually hoping they do, because Dr. Chen's evaluation, combined with video of their middle-of-the-night intimidation tactics, is going to make them look very, very bad." That afternoon, I finally went back to my own house. Helen came with me, and David checked every room before declaring it safe. Nothing had been disturbed. They hadn't broken in, at least. But the violation of knowing they'd been surrounding my home, hunting for me like prey, made every room feel contaminated. I took a long shower and changed clothes, made myself lunch even though I wasn't hungry, tried to reclaim some sense of normalcy. My phone rang around 3. "Michael." I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the notification appeared. Against David's advice, I listened to it. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" Michael's voice was tight with controlled fury. "I just got served with legal papers saying I'm trying to have you declared incompetent and steal your money. This is insane. We came by last night because we were worried about you. Helen called Vanessa and said you were acting strange, confused, talking about people following you. We brought Dr. Patterson to do a welfare check. And now you've disappeared and filed crazy restraining orders?" My blood went cold. "Helen called Vanessa?" I immediately walked next door. Helen answered quickly. "Did you call Michael's wife?" I asked without preamble. Helen's face went pale. "What? No, of course not." "Michael just left a message saying you called Vanessa. Told her I was acting confused and paranoid." "Eleanor, I swear to you, I never—" She stopped. "My phone. Yesterday afternoon, before all this happened, I couldn't find my phone for about an hour. I thought I'd just misplaced it. But what if they cloned it somehow, sent fake messages from your number?" I felt sick. Jesus, they thought of everything. But my nephew saw them. Who they'll say were medical professionals responding to a concerned family member's request for a welfare check on an elderly mother showing signs of mental instability. The pattern was clear now. Every move I made to protect myself, they'd already prepared a counter-narrative for. David needed to know this immediately. I called him, explained the voicemail, and the potential phone cloning. "That's actually good news," he said, which seemed insane. "Because Dr. Patterson, I looked him up. He's been sanctioned twice by the state medical board for inappropriate relationships with patients' families who hired him for competency evaluations. He essentially provides the answers people pay him to provide. If they're claiming they brought him for a legitimate welfare check, we can tear that apart. No reputable psychiatrist does 3 a.m. house calls for family members." The next morning, I dressed carefully for court. A simple navy dress, modest jewelry, my hair neat. I wanted to look exactly like what I was, a competent, put-together woman in her 70s who was fully capable of managing her own affairs. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echoing hallways and people in suits moving with purpose. David guided me to the right courtroom, and we took our seats. At 9, Michael and Vanessa walked in with their attorney, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit. Michael's face when he saw me was a complicated mix: relief, anger, confusion, something that might have been guilt. "Mom," he started toward me, but David stood up. "Mr. Walsh, there's a temporary restraining order in effect. You need to maintain distance." "This is my mother," who you attempted to have illegally declared incompetent in order to seize control of her assets, David said calmly. "Sit down, Mr. Walsh." Michael looked like he'd been slapped. Vanessa put a hand on his arm and whispered something, pulling him back. Judge Morrison was a woman in her 60s, with steel gray hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened as David presented our case, the timeline of events, the 3 a.m. visit with Dr. Patterson, the intimidation tactics, Dr. Chen's comprehensive evaluation proving my complete competence. Michael's attorney tried to counter. "Your Honor, this is a tragic misunderstanding. The Walshes were responding to legitimate concerns about Mrs. Walsh's welfare, based on reports from neighbors that she was exhibiting paranoid behavior." "Reports from neighbors?" Judge Morrison cut in. "Which neighbors? I see a statement here from a Helen Rosen, who says her phone was accessed without permission and false messages were sent." "We have no knowledge of any." "And Dr. Patterson." The judge looked at some papers before her. "The same Dr. Patterson who's been sanctioned for providing biased evaluations? That's who you brought for a welfare check at 3 in the morning?" Vanessa leaned forward and whispered urgently to their attorney. The lawyer's face went tight. "Your Honor, my clients were acting out of genuine concern. Your clients were attempting to circumvent legal processes to gain control of an elderly woman's assets." Judge Morrison's voice was cold. "I'm looking at Dr. Chen's evaluation here. Mrs. Walsh scored in the superior range on every cognitive measure. She's articulate, her judgment is sound, and she has every legal right to manage her own finances without interference from adult children who apparently believe they're entitled to her money." She looked directly at Michael. "Mr. Walsh, do you have anything to say?" Michael stood slowly. He looked genuinely shaken, like reality was crashing down around him, and he didn't understand how he'd gotten here. "Your Honor, I love my mother. I was trying to help her. The money, I just wanted to make sure she didn't get taken advantage of by scammers or managed to spend it herself without filtering it through you first." The judge's voice was sharp. "Mr. Walsh, I've seen dozens of these cases. Adult children who convince themselves they're protecting elderly parents when what they're really doing is positioning themselves to inherit sooner rather than later. It's dressed up as love, but it's exploitation." "That's not what this is." "Then explain the 3 a.m. visit with a disgraced psychiatrist. Explain attempting to have your mother evaluated for competency without her knowledge or consent. Explain searching her property in the middle of the night." Michael had no answer. Beside him, Vanessa's face was a mask of barely controlled fury. Judge Morrison signed papers and handed them to her clerk. "I'm making the restraining order permanent. Mr. and Mrs. Walsh are prohibited from contacting Eleanor Walsh, approaching her property, or making any legal or medical claims regarding her competence. Any violation will result in immediate arrest for contempt of court." She looked at me. "Mrs. Walsh, I'm also ordering that your son and daughter-in-law complete a course on elder rights and financial exploitation before this order can be considered for modification. Do you have anything you'd like to say?" I stood slowly. Every eye in the courtroom was on me. "Your Honor, I raised my son to be better than this. I taught him that love isn't about what you can get from people, that family means showing up without expecting payment, that an elderly parent deserves respect, not management." My voice stayed steady, even though my heart was pounding. "I'm disappointed beyond words, but I'm also relieved to know that I have the law on my side and that there are people—" I glanced at David and thought of Helen, who understand that being old doesn't mean being helpless. I looked directly at Michael. "I would have given you anything you actually needed. I would have helped you if you'd asked honestly, but you tried to take everything, and you dressed it up as concern. That's something I can't forgive easily." Michael's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like the little boy I'd raised, confused and hurting. But then Vanessa touched his arm, and his expression hardened again. Judge Morrison dismissed the hearing. As Michael and Vanessa left with their lawyer, Vanessa turned back once. The look she gave me was pure venom, cold and promising that this wasn't over. But for now, I'd won. Outside the courthouse, David shook my hand. You did beautifully. The restraining order is solid. They can't touch you now. What if they try to appeal or let them? We have documentation. We have Dr. Chen's evaluation. We have your testimony. Any judge would see through their attempt. He smiled. Mrs. Walsh, you should feel proud. You stood up for yourself when a lot of people would have crumbled. That evening I sat in my living room with Helen. We drank tea, herbal, something calming, and watched the sun set through my windows. How are you feeling? Helen asked gently. Sad, I admitted. Angry, relieved, betrayed, everything at once. That's normal. Is it? Because nothing about this feels normal. My own son tried to have me declared incompetent so he could steal my money. Not quite steal, Helen corrected softly. In his mind, he was probably accessing what he already thought of as his. That's how people justify these things. They convince themselves the money already belongs to them. They're just taking control a little early. Does that make it better or worse? Neither. Just explains how good people do terrible things. We sat in silence for a while. Then I asked the question that had been nagging at me. Helen, why are you really doing all this? You said something about your sister, but we were just neighbors. You didn't have to risk getting involved. Helen set down her teacup carefully. I told you my sister's son took everything from her. What I didn't tell you is that I had money, plenty of money, and I could have hired lawyers, could have fought for her. But I didn't, because I was afraid of family conflict, afraid of making things awkward, afraid of overstepping. Her voice went rough. Caroline died in that facility believing her son had been right, that she really was incompetent. She died ashamed and confused, and I got to live with knowing I could have prevented it. She looked at me with fierce intensity. When I saw what was happening to you, I had a choice. Stand by again, or actually do something. I chose differently this time, not just for you, for Caroline, for the person I should have been 20 years ago. I reached over and squeezed her hand. Thank you for being brave enough to try again. Over the next few weeks, life slowly returned to something resembling normal. I met with Patricia Hendricks, the elder law attorney I'd originally planned to see, and we set up airtight structures for my money, a trust with very specific provisions, a healthcare directive, a will that was unambiguous about my wishes. Your children are still beneficiaries, Patricia explained, but the trust is structured so that they can't access anything until you pass, and even then, it's distributed according to your wishes, not theirs. You maintain complete control. What about Michael? After everything but... That's your decision, Patricia said gently. You can disinherit him completely if you want, or reduce his portion, or keep things equal and add conditions. This is about your values and your wishes. I thought about it for a long time. Finally, I structured the trust so that both Michael and Lauren would inherit equally, but with one condition. The money would be paid out over 10 years, and if either of them contested the will or made claims against the estate, their portion would go to charity instead. I'm not cutting him off, I explained to Patricia, but I'm making sure he can't fight over my bones. He either accepts my terms or gets nothing. That's wise, she said, and it sends a message about autonomy and respect. Lauren came to visit me in early May. She brought flowers and wine, and we sat on my back porch in the spring sunshine. Mom, I'm so proud of you, she said. Standing up to Michael like that, I know it couldn't have been easy. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Have you heard from him at all? No. The restraining order is still in effect, and honestly, I'm not sure what I'd say if I did hear from him. Lauren was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm sorry I didn't do more. When I warned you, I should have done more than just warnings. I should have. Lauren, I stopped her. You did what you could with the information you had. Don't carry guilt that isn't yours. Will you ever forgive him? The question hung in the spring air. Somewhere down the street, children were laughing. A lawnmower hummed. Ordinary life continuing despite personal catastrophes. I don't know, I answered honestly. Maybe forgiveness is possible eventually. But trust? That's broken, maybe permanently. He looked at me and saw a problem to solve, an obstacle to his inheritance. That's hard to forget. He's my brother. I still love him, even though I'm furious at him. I know. And I still love him too. But love doesn't mean accepting abuse. It doesn't mean letting someone strip away your autonomy because they've decided they know better. We sat together, mother and daughter, and I felt grateful, so deeply grateful, that at least one of my children understood that respecting someone means honoring their choices, even when you don't agree with them. Michael's required elder rights course took 3 months to complete. I know because Patricia tracked it as part of the court order. Whether he actually learned anything or just went through the motions, I couldn't say. In late August, I received a letter, handwritten, on nice stationery, my name and address in Michael's familiar handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Dear Mom, I've been trying to write this letter for months. I've started dozens of drafts, and none of them felt adequate, but I'm sending this one anyway because you deserve to hear from me, even if what I have to say is imperfect. I'm sorry, completely, devastatingly sorry. The elder rights course I took, it was supposed to be a punishment, I guess, but it ended up being the most important education I've ever received. We heard from people who'd had their autonomy stolen by family members. We learned about the psychological impact of financial abuse. We heard from adult children who'd convinced themselves they were helping while actually destroying their parents' dignity. I heard my own story over and over in those testimonies, and I was ashamed. Mom, I convinced myself I was protecting you. I told myself that you didn't understand modern finance, that you'd be vulnerable to scams, that I was the responsible one helping you make smart choices. But the truth I've had to face, is that I wanted control. I wanted to feel important, needed. And underneath that, yes, I was thinking about inheritance, about securing my own financial future. Vanessa and I are separated. She's moved back to her parents' estate. Turns out when I was no longer useful as a vehicle to managing your money, I wasn't interesting to her anymore. I'm learning a lot about myself in therapy, including how I let her worldview reshape my values. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. I'm sending this because you deserved better from me, and I want you to know that I understand that now. I'm working on becoming the son you tried to raise instead of the person I became. I love you. I'm sorry I showed that love so poorly. Michael. I read the letter 3 times, cried through all 3 readings. Was it genuine? I didn't know. People can write beautiful apologies and still not change, but there was something in the letter that felt raw and honest. I called Lauren and read it to her. What do you think? I asked. I think... She paused, choosing words carefully. I think he's done some real self-reflection. I've talked to him a few times. He seems different, humbled. But Mom, you don't have to forgive him just because he wrote a nice letter. That's not how this works. I know. What do you want to do? I'm not sure yet. 3 weeks later, I wrote back. Not a long letter, but a short one. Michael, thank you for your letter and for your honesty. I believe you're sorry, and I believe you're working on yourself. Forgiveness is a process for me, not a decision. It will take time. Trust will take longer. But I'm willing to talk. When the restraining order period expires, if you want to meet for coffee, somewhere neutral, somewhere public, I'm open to that. I love you too, even when I'm furious at you. That's what makes this so hard. Mom. We met in October at a small cafe downtown. Michael looked thinner, older, worn down in a way that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with consequences. Thank you for coming, he said as we sat down with our coffees. I almost didn't. I wouldn't have blamed you. We talked for 2 hours. He told me about the therapy he was doing, about recognizing patterns in his behavior that went back years, about how Vanessa had amplified his worst impulses but hadn't created them. They'd been there all along. "I thought about that night a lot," he said, "showing up at your house at 3 a.m. with Dr. Patterson. In the moment, I'd convinced myself we were rescuing you. Looking back, I can see it was a kidnapping attempt. A legal one, but still, that's what it was." "Yes," I said quietly. "That's exactly what it was." "How do you live with that, knowing your own son tried to do that to you?" "The same way you live with knowing you tried to do it. One day at a time, with a lot of support from people who care about me. Helen, and others." I didn't elaborate about David or Patricia or Dr. Chen. Those were my safety nets, and he didn't need to know the details. We didn't resolve everything that day. We didn't hug goodbye or make promises about holiday dinners. But we started a conversation that could, maybe over years, lead somewhere better. As I drove home that afternoon, I thought about everything that had happened since that initial phone call about the settlement. How money had revealed things about my family I'd never wanted to see. How close I'd come to losing everything. Not just the settlement, but my autonomy, my dignity, my very self. But I'd fought back. With help, yes, but ultimately with my own strength. I'd stood in a courtroom and defended my right to exist as a full human being, not as a problem to be managed by adult children who thought age meant incompetence. The settlement money was safely structured now, protected, mine to use as I saw fit. I donated a portion to organizations fighting elder abuse, set up college funds for Lauren's kids, kept enough to live comfortably with some luxuries I'd never allowed myself before. But the most valuable thing wasn't the money. It was the lesson I'd learned and could now share, that growing old doesn't mean surrendering power, that family love should enhance your life, not constrain it, that you're allowed to fight back even against people you love when they try to take your dignity. I pulled into my driveway, my house, my sanctuary, mine, and saw Helen sitting on her porch. She waved, and I waved back. Tonight, we'd have dinner together. She was teaching me to make her mother's pierogi recipe, something about heritage and connection, and building chosen family alongside the biological kind. Tomorrow, I had lunch plans with Lauren and her kids. Next week, a painting class I'd signed up for at the community center. And in a month, maybe another coffee with Michael. Or maybe not. That would be my decision to make. Because at 73 years old, I was still the author of my own life. No one else got to write my ending. No one else got to decide when I was too old, too confused, too incompetent. I got to decide. And I decided to keep going, keep fighting, keep choosing myself. The neighbor who'd knocked frantically at 3 a.m. had been right about one thing. They had been coming for me. But she'd been wrong about another thing. You could trust family. Just not blindly. Not without boundaries. Not without being willing to fight for yourself when that trust was betrayed. I walked into my house, locked the door behind me, and smiled. I was home. I was safe. I was free. And I was exactly where I was supposed to be.